Zbyszko, it's nice to be here, see all you fans, and see some of the people that we have a long history with. It takes a meeting like this to get to see each other. Sometimes years and years go by. But anyway, Bill, what you said about Georgianna. Georgianna started out as a kid. She was the president of Buddy Rogers fan club. And after I took title from Buddy Rogers, she became my fan club president. She was a great lady because she stayed with the business, and she had such a good heart that as she had a website and she had a chatterbox. The name of it was Chatterbox, a newsletter. And she helped out more wrestlers, I think, than I can't imagine anybody else, because everybody knew her, and they would call her and say, Georgianna, there's going to be some personal appearances to be made in Jersey, New York, Boston, whatever. And Georgianna would always know everybody, and she knew the promoters and that. And she would do her best to book some of these guys, and she would never ask for anything in return. She just would do it out of the goodness of her heart. She was just a great lady, and I know that the thing here is we kept in touch, as she did with a lot of other people, but she kept in touch, and I talked to her the very day before. And we were talking because she was telling me, about, she had read something about that I was going to be honored in Pittsburgh for this banquet, and she wanted to tell me, she was going to put it on her website and that. The next day I get a phone call from a guy, a photographer named Bob, who used to do took a lot of pictures for her from different events and whatever. Calls me up and says, Bruno, this is Bob, the photographer. I says, hey Bob, how you doing? What are you doing with Georgianna's phone? Because the phone said Macrocopoulos. And he came right out and he says, well, Georgianna died this morning. Man, you could have floored me. I was in shock, because when I talked the day before, nothing was implied that there was anything wrong or anything like that. I was like a zombie the rest of the day, because like that, I think I knew Georgianna for about 50 years. And she did something that nobody else could do. Anybody from that era, a lot of you folks are too young to know, but from that era, Buddy Rogers and I were kind of pretty bitter enemies. We didn't like each other at all. And we never communicated, talked or anything. And at a particular, one of these autograph sessions, was that John Arrizzi?
John Arrizzi, yes.
In New York. She did what nobody else could have ever done. And she came over to me and she said, Bruno, she said, I have a big favor to ask. I said, well, sure, what is it? She said, it's a big one. I said, ask. She said, I want to have a picture taken with you and Buddy. Oh, well, about that, that's asking a lot. So I said, well, what did you ask him? And she said, yeah. What did he say? He said that if you would, then he would. Well, then, I said, okay. So the funny thing is that she got in the middle, he got on one side, I got on the other side. And anybody who sees that picture, boy, you can see it that there was no love. But the thing is, she got us to pose with her, and only Georgianna could do that, because we all loved her. We all thought the world of her. She was like such a great lady that you just couldn't say no to her.
Bruno, this was very moving that we had found out that she was actually buried with that photograph.
I just heard that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well,
let's have a big standing ovation for Georgianna Providence. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Thank you. All right, it's time now to play one of my favorite games. Where are they now? Stan Hansen, come on up over here. All right. Stan Hansen, the man infamous in wrestling history for breaking Bruno's neck, of course. And we're not going to do our Q&A right now. Just this is Where Are They Now? Tell everybody what you're doing these days.
It's nobody's business what I'm doing.
Okay, you can sit right back down. Thank you. And he means that. That's what I'm afraid of.
No, it's very nice to see everybody that turned out today, and
That's not what you said earlier this morning. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm lying right now. No, it's really an honor to be here and up here with, especially with Bruno and Larry and all the other guys that are here, you know. And but what am I doing today?
Yeah.
I'm living in Texas, and I'm retired, and I just kind of follow my sons in sports and just take it easy.
What sports are your sons playing?
My sons play baseball,
Okay.
and anyway.
Minor league?
One's in the professional, and he's in the minor leagues the first year.
Okay.
And the other one's still in college, and he's a freshman in college. And he's playing for University of Texas at Arlington. And you know, I have a grandson, and my older kids is a paramedic firewoman, and
Firewoman.
my other son is a librarian, and anyway, that's what I'm doing.
All right, thank you, Stan Hansen. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Road Warrior Animal, come on up. Let's hear it for Animal. Come on up. What did you used to call me, you little gerbil-faced
Turtle-faced twin.
Right, that's what I call. So tell everybody what you're doing these days.
Well, just kind of retired, doing nothing.
That's it?
Yeah, kinda.
Hanging out,
Just
coming to
doing personal
breakfast?
appearances as much as I can around the country. You know, see the great fans. You guys definitely treated here today, man. This was a great banquet. And look at a lot of the guys I looked up to in the wrestling business. You know, Bruno, a living legend, Larry Zbyszko.
Oh,
You got Stan Hansen.
I don't know who's got that
You got
copyright.
J.J. Dillon back there was undoubtedly managed one of the greatest entities, the Four Horsemen.
Absolutely.
You know, so a lot of great guys. Good to see.
yeah,
a lot
tell
of
us
guys.
about your son.
Well, actually, I two equally as proud of both. One's an Iraqi war vet.
Yeah.
Been back now for 2 years. My son Joe. He's in Baghdad, Fallujah, a couple of nasty spots, you know, and he made it out alive and just made me a grandpa. I got a granddaughter.
Hey, congratulations. All right.
I'm not too happy being a grandpa under 50, but I'm proud of that. And then my son James had got selected by the St. Louis Rams this year in the draft. So,
Yeah.
playing in the NFL, it's still great. He was up for Defensive Rookie of the Year, so he was, you know, how could you not be proud, you know?
Absolutely.
My wife and I are really proud. And my daughter Jessica is an ice hockey player, and she's at St. Olaf College in Minnesota, plays women's ice hockey, so she's the brood of the family.
She got that from you.
Oh, she's nasty, man.
Thank you.
She's the kind when the referee goes the other way, she gets cheap shotted. Oh, there's the ref. Bam! That's my daughter. That's my daughter. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Alan. Where is J.J. Dillon? Come on up. Let's hear it for the man famous for four fingers here. James J. Dillon.
Yeah.
Welcome to... Okay, you can use the steps. That's all right. Welcome to Wrestle Reunion, JJ.
My pleasure.
And tell everybody what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm still working.
Yeah. What are you doing?
I work for the state of Delaware.
Yeah.
Work in the Department of Corrections, and
Did most of you people know that he works for the Department of Corrections? No? Which had got to be interesting because when you first took that job, people knew who you were, right?
yeah, a lot of people that, behind prison walls got a lot of time and watch a lot of stuff. And, yeah, so there's a lot of people there from day one that were there long enough to remember me. So
Yeah,
it's kinda
yeah,
scary,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's good. You gotta have a life sometimes after wrestling, and I try to balance it by coming to functions like this and, you know, seeing guys. Bruno had a huge impact in me back to very early in my career, back when I was even a referee. And Stan Hansen was in Amarillo, which is one of the second or third territory that I went to, so I've known Stan that long. And of course, the Road Warriors are the Road Warriors, and just about everybody that's here. You know, Larry Zbyszko, Mouth to South, Jimmy Hart, and over the years, pretty well worked with just about everybody.
Well, we are glad and thrilled to have you here at Wrestle Reunion. J.J. Dillon, everybody. Give us a Four Horsemen. Wait, before you go. All right. I want to make sure you didn't forget that. And that Bruno, pardon me, I have to do my Bruno imitation. Thank you. And now here is that doggone Judas, Larry Zbyszko. I had to do it. This Zbyszko, how he turned his back on me and said, Bruno. Anyway, come on.
Knock, knock.
Oh, here we go
Okay,
again.
never mind.
Larry Zbyszko, everybody.
Good morning.
Now, we pretty much know what you're doing these days. You had a match last night against
You don't
Scotty
have an
200.
idea.
I have no clue. Well, why don't you tell everybody here what you're
What
doing?
am I doing? You tell me what you're
Well, you're doing, you just came back from doing a movie,
Yeah, we did that,
right?
yeah.
Tell them about the movie real quick.
You know what I'm doing right now is really kind of living the dream. Thank you, God. That a lot of people would like to when you get to my stage of the game. I usually get up in the morning and if it's summer in Florida and it's hot, I'll lay by the pool, make sure you get nice and tan if it's too hot. Then 10 months out of the year, I play golf a couple times a week, have a good old time. Thank God for professional wrestling in this business, because as much as you makes comments like you're retired, you've had it, somebody always calls you on a weekend, 2-3 weekends a month. You fly out, you do autograph conventions, you meet people, you get to see the faces of the fans, which is something my generation kind of, didn't do to keep the mystique, going about that. And so thank God it's given me an opportunity to never ever have to grow up ever. And there's no way I'm growing up now. But I flew out and did a movie for a few days, and I got another 4-movie deal with that person, and another movie deal, and every time you look at those damn wrestling boots and say, I am not bending over and tying them up again, someone calls and gets you out of the house. It gives you a purpose for living, and again, the other reason that purpose for living was still there is because all you people give a damn about it.
Thank you, Larry
Thank you
Zbyszko.
very much.
Thank you, Larry Zbyszko.
And just one quickie, and the other part of that thing that made this dream happen, that gave me the whole dream in the first place, was the greatest guy who ever put on a pair of boots, Mr. Bruno Sammartino. Bruno, you are the living legend.
What? He said it.
Not legally.
All right. Just wanted to make sure, no copyright infringement. All the lawyers here taking notes. Last, but definitely not least, one of the most shy people I've ever met in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. We got to get him out of his shell. Come on up, Jimmy Hart. You got that Memphis gait going there. All right.
Wow. Hey, thank you guys for coming out early this morning, because without you guys, we wouldn't be here. I promise you that.
That's correct.
First of all, Bill Apter, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is my time to say thank you to a lot of people. This man made the greatest phone call to Jerry the King Lawler and myself back in Memphis, Tennessee, bringing the late, great Andy Kaufman in. So if it hadn't been for this guy calling us, we'd have had never Andy Kaufman down there, so Memphis could kind of get on the map. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, man, thank you.
Oh, I should say thank you very much. That's what he would have said.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Stan Hansen, thank you for coming to Memphis, Tennessee, back with our feud with Jerry Lawler. And each week we'd bring people in to try to knock the king off. They said, this week you're going to have Stan Hansen. I said, oh, awesome, man, this is great, baby. Not only were the people scared to death of him, I was scared to go to the ring with him with a cowbell, man. So that was awesome. Thank you for coming down there with us. Bruno Sammartino, he came back to New York to wrestle the honky-tonk man, the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and myself, week after week after week. So thank you for doing that. We'd have never been in New York if it hadn't been for all the great stuff you did in New York before us, and I'll tell you that now. J.J. Dillon came to Memphis, Tennessee. I was so thrilled. He managed the Ugandan Giant Kamala, the greatest interview I've ever heard in my life about that. So I picked up a few things for him, and I love you for that so much. Larry Zbyszko, all I can say is we go to the same barber. Both of us. We got that little infomercial thing going, so Larry, I love you for that.
Can you get me that guy's address?
You know I will.
Thank you. I can use something.
Deal off on that. But the Road Warrior Animal, we had the pleasure of doing a song for them in Memphis and cutting it. which was the Blackboard Jungle we had then, a Rumble in the Jungle or something, but I'll never forget that. I know, they did a great job doing it, but thank you guys, because really, without you guys, we wouldn't all be up here. We love you. I hope you're going to have a lot of fun the next couple of days. Sal Correnti, thank you for inviting me again for Wrestle Reunion, and Mike and everybody, and Colin Bowman. So thank you very much. We love you guys. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. All right, could I please ask Bruno Sammartino, Larry Zbyszko, and Stan Hansen to come on up so we can start our Q&A here. Yes, please. Stan, you might want to sit in the middle here.
Yeah, sit in the middle.
Sit in the middle. Sit in the middle. Would you mind holding this? Thank you very much. You're working the mic for me. All right, welcome. These two gentlemen, Bruno Sammartino, in your career gave you more headaches than anyone else. Stan Hansen gave you a major headache. You broke your neck. Larry Zbyszko, of course, was your protege.
Still a headache.
Still a headache. Still a headache. Tell us briefly about your various programs and matches with the two of these. Larry, can I steal this from you for a second? Just for a minute. Thank you. With Stan Hansen, I remember that match at Madison Square Garden. I was there, I shot pictures, and I actually got the impact, and I didn't know until the next day I was on a train with Gary Michael Capetta, and he said, don't tell anyone, Vince doesn't want this out. Hansen broke Bruno's neck. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, it's funny because the table where I'm sitting with some gentlemen over here, they asked me a question. They asked me, was I very bitter after Stan broke my neck? You know, let me tell you, when Stan Hansen came to New York, I didn't really know him, but I was impressed with him because he was a big guy, weighed over 300 pounds at the time. He moved well, you know, he was good. And when we were in the Garden, there's one thing, and I'm not saying that this is one of the things that affected Stan, but one thing I didn't realize was at Madison Square Garden that I appeared every month. In fact, in the 60s, every 3 weeks I used to be there, and then later every month. To me, the Garden, I loved it, but it was just another arena. But a lot of guys were intimidated when they first came to Madison Square Garden because of its reputation, its name, or whatever. I don't know if that had anything to do with Stan, but we were having a great match. We were really going back and forth, doing a lot of good stuff, I thought. It was a hot day, we were both sweating, and I was shooting some tackles, and Stan scooped me up for a body slam, and somehow we were both very slippery because sweating so much. And the fact is, I came crashing down on my head from the body slam position, and broke my neck. Now, you know, the stuff about people especially back then and today, they're asking me if I was very bitter towards Stan. My feeling always were that despite what anybody thinks, especially in those days when we had those boxing rings, they were like concrete. You know, the risk of getting hurt was always there. And you knew that going in the ring. And if you would be bitter or whatever because you got hurt, listen, there were guys who got hurt in some of my matches. I happened to get hurt pretty bad in this match. But I can assure you that there was never any bitter feelings as far as thinking that Stan Hansen broke my neck. Absolutely not.
Stan, were you bitter? Did you break his neck on purpose? On purpose? Would you pass that down to? Tell us about that night.
Well, at first, you know, I mean, I have to thank Mike Peduces, who was a friend of Bruno's, and he was down at Dallas, and he had seen me, and he had gone and talked to Bruno, and that's how I ended up getting a chance to go into, you know, Bruno through Mike. The guy gave me the opportunity to go up there, and I was only been in the business about 3 years, and I was green, and you know, there was a lot of things about me that probably contributed to you know, this happening to Bruno, but I never ever, after it was over, I was really concerned after the match when I found out that, you know, he had really been hurt bad, you know, because I knew it. I knew it. He had gotten hurt in the ring, but I pulled him up, you know, and just held him a second and tried to, you know, see if, you know, if he was all right, because I saw him land on the back of his head. anyway, went on with the match, and so I was very surprised later that his neck was broken, and so I was pretty
shocked.
Right.
I was really concerned and felt really bad. I was ready to go back to Texas, and but because he's the type of guy he was, he through channels in some way, he ended up, letting it be known that there's no hard feelings. Just keep going, and I appreciate that, because if he would have had attitude, never mind what the office had or anybody else had attitude, it didn't matter. But if Bruno didn't have a bad attitude towards me, then I felt like I could go on.
All right, thank you. Larry?
I don't want
You don't want. The feud with you and Bruno, did you ever think in your wildest thoughts that would go to the heights and depths that it did?
At the beginning, no. I mean, in those days, no. It started out as the whole story is in my book.
What book would that be, Larry?
The Adventures of Larryland book.
Ah.
The only reason I say that is because the story is so incredible and long that, for me to
It would
delve
take hours
into it
upon hours.
wouldn't do it justice. But it basically started off, on my end as something that a young guy looking for a break in the business, at which time Bruno was basically finishing his and doing the broadcasting, doing the color end of it. At a time when the business was about to do a big change that we didn't know of at the time, going from like one generation, one old school to the next. But, and again, dealing with a promotion that really didn't believe in the whole thing. The popular mentality back then, especially for the dreaded bad guy, because Bruno was, such a gorilla-looking kind of guy, was he had to be a 300-pound, ugly, beastie kind of guy, And so when I came along, at a mere 240 and this and that, and the McMahons didn't believe in it.
You had to be a giant.
The
to work
McMahons didn't
in,
believe in
yeah.
it. So aside from the ridiculous situation that developed politically, along with Bruno trying to convince himself to get back into a situation after having his neck broke, with circumstances that again are kind of like ridiculously complicated, which in turn evoked the biggest thing that wrestling couldn't even imagine at the time, aside from selling out and breaking out records at every arena along the East Coast, selling out Shea Stadium, which shocked, absolutely shocked, not only the wrestling world, the sports world. I don't know if you get tapes of the old footage that came out of the New York City newsrooms when me and Bruno outdrew the Mets. It was something that was so unheard of that the story is just ridiculous to try to condense. But again, my part of it was one thing, but the only reason that it got, because nobody here today can imagine, you can't imagine how loved and how big this man was. You just can't imagine.
Yes.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please. Larry?
Larry, can we buy your book anywhere?
I had asked him that.
Amazon.com.
Yes, Bruno?
I just wanted to add something here that to wind up with the Zbyszko match. When I was a rookie and I saw that I was going to be wrestling Gorgeous George, I was so thrilled. I thought, my God, I'm going to be in the ring with Gorgeous George. Who am I? I was just a rookie, a nobody. And I had such an experience that night that stayed with me throughout my whole career, and that's where the Zbyszko things even come in. I wrestled Gorgeous George in Philadelphia at the convention hall, and I was nervous because I couldn't believe it that a nobody like me is matched with this legend, Gorgeous George. Now, Gorgeous George wasn't a big guy. He may be 215 pounds, something like that. In those days, I was 275 pounds. I was a pretty big guy. So when I went in the ring, I was still thrilled, like I can't believe it. I couldn't wait till I was going to tell my friends, I'm going to wrestle Gorgeous George. But when I went in the ring and we started wrestling, Gorgeous George's best days were behind him, obviously. This is at the end of his career. I guess he was about to retire. And people start saying, Bruno, don't hurt that old man. Not that I was well-known or famous or anything, but don't hurt that old man. Don't leave that washed-up little old man alone. It hurt me so deeply that when that match was over, I mean, it really made me feel so awful that I thought that will never happen to me. I don't care if I have 10 cents or what, when that day comes that I can sense that people are no longer behind me and that I'm overstaying, I will get out of there. And the reason why I'm telling you all that is because how fortunate I was that toward the end of my career, when I'm considering retirement, I was on top. Everything was going good. We were doing great business. Then the Zbyszko thing came up. And of course, it was a big explosion that, as he said, about the arena, Shea Stadium moment. And I thought, man, what a way to get out. And that's how I got out, ladies and gentlemen, just the way I had dreamed and hoped it would be. So that, besides everything else along with it, it made my dream come true to get out on top. It's still, you know, up there.
It's so great that you had that legacy rather than somebody saying he stuck around too long. How
Right.
sad.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
don't
didn't
want
want.
that.
I
You
didn't
don't
want
want that.
that, no.
Questions from our guests here for Bruno, Stan Hansen, or Larry Zbyszko? Hold on, we're going to go this way. This is my exercise portion of the program here. Okay, we stand up, please, and your name.
John.
Nice and loud, Jane.
John, during your match with Stan Hansen, when he broke your neck, I believe you finished the match, if I'm not mistaken. At what point did you realize something was seriously wrong?
You know what? That's the one part I don't remember. First of all, when I hit on my head down, I felt like a bolt of lightning went through me. And after that, everything is a blank. When they told me that the thing went on for a couple of minutes, I'm not sure what. At first I thought, because all I remember was they were calling an ambulance, and it took me to a hospital in New York City. So I have no recollection whatsoever of what happened after that. I really didn't.
Thank
So
you,
I
John.
can't tell you much.
Next question, right over here. Stand up, please, and your name.
My name is Russ. For all of you, if there was anyone that you could wrestle one more time, who would it be?
Anyone you could wrestle one more time, who would that person be? Larry?
Jessica Rabbit, maybe she looks the same. I'd like to wrestle Bruno one more time and Shea, because that means I would be 26 years old again. That's mine. Other than that, there was a bunch of great guys. I mean, there was something that made this business so interesting and really. You can give the guys credit. A lot of guys don't get credit of how smart and sharp a professional wrestler had to be to make it to a certain level, because you had to work with everybody, and everybody was different. And you get in the ring with Stan, you had to do it one way. You get in the ring with a technical wrestler, that new wrestling, you had to do it another way. And then you get in the ring with a Killer Kowalski who ran berserk and did absolutely nothing, but did everything for an hour. He had to do that. And so to be a success, you really had to be a chameleon and know everything and how to gel yourself with the personality of your opponent. Because if you didn't, it was a stinkeroo. But the guys who rose to the top, the guys that were smart enough to know how to do a little this, a little that with everybody, because we were all different, were the guys that became successes and lasted the test of time. So, wrestlers don't get the credit I think they deserve in terms of how sharp they had to be in some ways, especially even in the showbiz entertainment part of it. Each individual was a director, a producer, a writer, a psychiatrist, a stuntman, and everything combined. So they were really a breed of men, that are rare, that are very rare.
So that one more time would be Bruno Sammartino.
And me.
Okay. All right. Stan Hansen, if you had one more match left in you, who would it be?
It's kind of like Larry said, there's just so many great guys out there, so many great opponents that I've had, both in Japan and here in America.
Pressure, one guy.
Yeah, it's just one guy.
Yeah.
Bill Abner.
Thank you.
Shut him up.
And he still puts an N in my name.
You know
Thank
what?
you.
That's a tough question. That's a tough question. I hear what these guys say, and I say the same thing. I'd hate to pick an individual because there were so many people that I respect in this business that were so great that I would feel I would be doing them a great injustice to name one amongst them, because there were too many truly, truly great guys that I would give anything to be young again and to be facing them in the ring again. But no, I couldn't name just one.
So let's move forward with that question. Is there anyone you've seen in the past 5 years or so that's currently active that you sit there and you go like, I would have liked to have worked against that guy?
Not because, unfortunately, I haven't watched wrestling in about 25 years.
Okay. What about you, Stan?
I'm guilty, same.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot, just vaguely I know some names, but they're all big and look like great talent. But I
Larry?
really don't know.
Well, I'm insane because I think I'm 30.
You're not?
But God bless you, Bill. But you know what? In fact, I've watched wrestling, not a lot, but a bit, because I was involved with like TNA and new stuff for the last few years, and all that. And there's two guys that I would like to get in the ring with. Half of me, the other half, reality-wise, maybe not, because they're also, the big names. And two guys, after all these years, I've never ever been in the ring with ever. One was Ric Flair, and one was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Never worked with either of them. So those would be the two guys that, if anything ever happened, if we can still walk someday together. But
See,
that would be the guy.
I would have liked to have seen Zbyszko against Randy Orton. Prime.
I kick his ass now.
Okay, all right. So, next question. Another question. Beck, I'll get to you right over there. Stand up, please. Your name?
My name's Eric. For Mr. Hansen, I was wondering, I've seen a lot of your matches from Japan and stuff, and I was wondering, how was it different wrestling in Japan and the United States? Because it also seemed like every tape I saw was a huge, stadium thing. Crowds were packed. It was just going off the hook. And a lot of times out here, you go to matches, and sometimes, we don't get 500 people to show up. I was just wondering what the difference was from one side of the ocean to the other.
Well, I think that, it's just that, there's different times of business. I mean, there was packed arenas all around the United States, the East Coast, all those places, Pittsburgh, and Atlanta, Georgia, you name it. Back in Japan for about 15, 20 years, the business was really was on fire, and I happened to be part of that, and it was really it was exciting, and I was really blessed to be there at that time. But the matches themselves I think they were much faster pace, and it's a lot more solid, going back to the way it was back in the early '60s and so forth, and so it was you had to have a lot of gas to be able to go out and go at that kind of speed for a long period of time, and luckily I had good cardiovascular because I had to run from Bruno.
Were the crowds totally different from a U.S. crowd that would scream and yell to the Japanese crowds? From what I understand, they were just...
In the beginning, the first time I went over there, in fact, I went with Larry the very first time I went to Japan. I think that was his first time too. Yeah. And we were told that, this is '75, we were told, don't worry, people won't say one word. And sure enough, they didn't say nothing. There was no noise whatsoever.
Did you think that was weird, like you weren't...
Well, yeah, it was, there was a couple of guys on the tour that tried to mess around a little bit and get a reaction. Nothing did. So just, but over time, the Japanese fans slowly changed, and they became a little more verbal, but it's still not like it is, now. But they did become a little more verbal over time.
Okay, thank you, Stan. Next question. Over here. Your name?
My name's Tony.
Tony just ate the microphone.
Yes.
Good.
And for all three of you, I want to know if there's anyone that you've faced in the ring that either by way of their reputation or previous encounters that you just knew once you got in the ring with them, they were going to put you through the paces. And really take you to task. Almost to a point where you're like, great, I got to fight this guy tonight. Was there anybody that just stood out for you over the years that said, where you just had that, not apprehension, but...
Like that dream opponent?
No, just the one guy that really was going to take you to task. You knew you were going to be in for a hell of a night getting in the ring with the guy.
Bruno, you want to start on that one?
Well, I'm deaf in one ear and I can't hear the other one, so I don't know if I understood the whole question. But if I understood you right, you're talking about an opponent that was a great challenge to you, is that it? Well, one guy I have to mention, there were a lot of guys, again, I want to make it clear, a lot of guys, but there was one guy who was a machine that Larry mentioned earlier, and I used to love to wrestle this guy because I felt like I was testing me as far as how good I was as far as stamina and speed and what have you. And that was Kowalski, because Kowalski was like a machine. If Kowalski had to go an hour, one time I went an hour 25 minutes with him. He was the type of guy that the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes, he could continue at that same speed. And I remember a lot of times I used to wrestle him, and the boys used to watch the match because they wanted to see who was going to run out of gas first. That's the kind of challenge that he put out there for you. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of great conditioned guys out there, a lot of them. But for me, he sticks out because he was just like a machine who never slowed down.
You had some marathon matches against Gorilla Monsoon as well. Did he also push you to the limits?
I don't know. He was amazing because he weighed over 400 pounds. And one time in the garden, we went to a curfew match, which we started at 9:30 and it ended at 11. It was a one-fall match. So, yeah, an hour and a half. So what was amazing about that impressed me was that a guy, 420, 410 pounds, could go that distance, and he didn't go that distance by laying on a mat. He worked hard. We did a lot of, in fact, I cracked one of his ribs 15 minutes into the match, believe it or not. And believe it or not, it was not something I usually did, but I drop kicked him and cracked his rib. And this guy continued for the duration of the match. A lot of people saw Monsoon and they said, well, he was a big, heavy, a lot of fat on him. This guy was a terrific athlete. He had a great amateur background, and as a pro, he was, I don't know if too many guys his size that could compare to him. So, okay. Yeah.
Stan Hansen, opponent that made you really work that night.
Well, I've never had the opportunity to go against Bruiser Brody, you know, my partner there in Japan. It was probably building towards that, I guess, and I think that was a kind of a dream in Japan to see us in a singles match. We crossed in a couple of tag matches, but anyway, I think Brody and I, it would have been a fight. You know.
Well, what about somebody you actually wrestled who took you to the limits that you worked against?
Everybody.
Interesting.
I went to the limit every night.
All right. Larry Zbyszko.
Yeah. Wow, you know, I never really had a guy with the take me to the limit thing. It was kind of a little different. I had a different situation than most guys because I became famous because, you know, thanks to Bruno at a time when the business was changing. And, you know, immediately, like after the early 80s, as the business changed, I was about one of the only guys that carried an old school heat with them because of the giant feud. There's guys like the Road Warriors and the other guys were coming along with a different look and a different, you know, game and time. I kind of, the heat was so tremendous that we had that I basically could stand there for 20 years listening to crowds yell and chant, "Larry sucks," and do absolutely nothing.
They were also cheering
to the point of, you know, nauseum, but it meant something. I actually rode our angle for 20 years at a time when, you know, I remember, I'll give you an example. Joe and Hawk and us, we're in some town. And I went out, and this is like, oh my God, mid-'80s probably, sometime, and I walked out, and the place goes nuts. And it's thundering, and I'm working with a nobody guy named Frankie Lancaster, who is a sweet guy, local, you know, nobody kind of guy. Wrestled him for 10 minutes, and the roof blows off the place, and the place goes nuts, thunderous crowds. I go in, and the guys go, "Whoa, we heard the crowd. It's a hot crowd. This is going to be an easy night, hot crowd." So, okay, I'll go to Road Warriors. And about 10 minutes later, after you could hear a pin drop, in come the Road Warriors, and the Hawk comes up to me and says, "I thought you said this was going to be an easy crowd, what the hell?" I said, "Well, yeah, Mike, if you know how to work." But yeah, but it was a different era at the time. That wasn't Joe, yeah. But it was a different era in time where, like, I watched myself on the ESPN Classics that they've shown the last 2 years, and I'm pissing myself off. I'm going, "Larry, do something for Pete's sake!" But the point was, I had kind of a career and a blessing because I had a different situation than everybody else that came in. I was known as the man that retired Bruno. I was instantly hated. I had a get-out-of-jail-free card when everybody else had to work their ass off. I rode his coattails whether Bruno was there or not, so I really had a blessed, charmed existence of getting away with murder, and thank you.
Okay, next question. Dr. Mike Lano has a question. Do you all know Dr. Mike? Stand up, Dr. Mike.
Just quickly, any favorite, just for all three of you guys, any favorite ribs, whether you caused them or not?
Oh, there's got to be a million of these. Larry, do you have one?
Try to think of a clean rib.
Well, we're all family here. It's okay.
A rib.
Yeah.
A rib.
Something that somebody pulled on you in the dressing room?
You know, I was afraid to get into the rib thing because I didn't want to be a victim of the revenge rib. And then there were some guys that would go to no ends to get the revenge rib. I've heard stories of millions of ribs. I really don't know if I ribbed anybody. You know, I'll think about it while Stan talks.
I don't know one.
See?
You don't know one.
Same here.
That's it. That's it. Next question. We want to come back to that one if Larry thinks it's something. You never know.
Martin, question for all three of you. If there was one guy that we're going to team you up with and say you got to ride up and down the highways, I mean, like Larry, you and the Enforcers with Arn Anderson was one of my favorite tag teams. But who's the one guy you guys would want to team up with and say, this guy I'm going to ride up and down the road with and spend a significant amount of time with? Who would that be?
Or would you rather go up and down the road with a lady, you know?
Or a diva.
Or a diva, yes.
I have to say Brody. Brody would be the guy I'd like to go up and down the road with again.
By the way, talking about Bruce and Brody, in all the years that I shot wrestling pictures, probably the most terrifying moment I ever experienced, Stan Hansen, I was by ringside, and Hansen said, when Brody and I come out, be careful, move out of the way. They come out of the dressing room swinging these huge chains, and the fans, thousands of fans on the ringside floor, knock all their chairs over and just start running. And I felt like I was in a Godzilla movie. It's the most frightening thing I've ever seen, you and Brody together as a tag team. So, Larry, you're, who would you ride up and down the roads with and team with?
Oh, you know, it varied. I mean, in those days of the territories, it varied. You know, some guys would get along with each other, and some guys couldn't get along with each other. And the bottom line, though, you know, then there was guys from, you know, guys like Steve Regal and Tony Gurria and some others. And the secret was, I think, just keeping it minimum, because if you got more than one guy riding with you, it was like riding with a bunch of women. This guy had to stop here. Oh, the air conditioning's too cold. Oh, the air conditioning's too hot. Oh, you're not going to have another cigarette. Jesus Christ. Can we pull over here? You know, you just want to kill each other.
I need another beer.
So, yeah, but, you know, it kind of varied. They were all cool guys in a different way. Some guys wanted to go to the gym. Other guys wanted to go to the bar. So, you know, it kind of depended. The secret was keeping it, you know, just to a minimum.
Bruno, what about you?
They all picked him up and drove him around in limos. He never.
Is that right? Didn't Arnold Skolin drive you everywhere? That's what they thought.
No, because in those days I was traveling quite a bit, and you drove some, but you flew quite a bit. You know what, in all honesty, there were different guys I tag team with that I liked, like my good buddy from the old country. We come from the same area as Dominic DeNucci.
Yes.
For a while, the Bruiser and I were tag team in the Midwest between my title reigns.
I love Dick, but I don't want to hang out with him. Dick was a great guy, great action guy, but he was a bit of a crazy guy. But I enjoyed, the tags with him. But no, I don't know, the funny thing was Stan Hansen just said that he wanted to wrestle Brody in Japan. I got news for you. I wrestled him in Japan. And I wrestled, excuse me, I wrestled Brody all over the place because he came in New York territory, so we wrestled everywhere. And I liked him too. I thought that he was a big, powerful looking guy. He worked hard in the ring. I thought he was a very decent, good man. And I'll tell you the truth, when he met that tragedy, I couldn't believe it. It really bugged the heck out of me. But he was a great guy.
They used to look for these monsters to go against Bruno Sammartino. You had guys like Don Leo Jonathan and all these giants that you wrestled against.
New York was known for that in those days, that territory. I mean.
Stan Hansen.
It was a big man territory. Well, Stan Hansen.
No, I just wave it in.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Bockwinkel has just entered the conversation.
In a way, it was a shame in New York because we had some great talent, but they weren't very big guys. And somehow the mentality of the fans in those days was, no matter how good he was, that he could never face Kowalski if he was a good guy, because they were just too big. So that's the reputation, and we used to get a lot of big guys.
You were big, though.
Well, in those days I was 275 pounds, so for a guy who was barely 6 feet tall, but the other guys, we're talking about Jonathan, like 6'7", 350 pounds. We're talking about, Bobo Brazil, for example, another 6'6", 320 pounds. Ernie Ladd, 6'9", 350 pounds. Killer Kowalski was 6'6.5", and he weighed about 280 pounds. So there were Big Bill Miller. Big Bill Miller was another 6'5", 6'6", and he was around 340, 350 pounds. Tanaka was another 300 pounder. I have to laugh. Some of the fans say to me, yeah, but nowadays they have a lot of big guys like they didn't have. Are you kidding me? There were a lot of giants in those days. There were a lot of big guys. The Road Warriors, I remember the first time, I didn't know these guys. First time I saw them, I thought, man, look at these two guys. I mean, they were extremely impressive and extremely big. As we get older, we get a little wiser because we accumulate injuries. I know myself, I had major back surgeries, hip replacement, knee surgeries, so you have to bring the weight down. And I saw Joe today, Animal of the Road Warriors, and he looks great, but he's not quite what he used to be. But these guys were all giants, and so to think that in those days, that they weren't big people, believe me, there were a lot of giants back then.
Yeah. Next question. Back here. By the way, I remember the one time I thought it was a little off was when they brought in John Tolis, because he was one of the smaller people that you ever wrestled.
Well, but he wasn't that small. He was over 6 feet tall, and he weighed about 245. But remember, it was a one-match thing. He was not when they brought him in to be a regular all over the territory.
He just didn't seem to have that big monster look of all the other guys. Okay, your name and your question.
My name is Mark. This is for Mr. Hansen. What was the mood like in All Japan during the Noah Exodus? And did you ever consider jumping with him at any point?
What was the mood like in Japan during the Noah Exodus, and did you ever consider jumping ship?
No, I never considered jumping ship. The mood, people split off, do different things, the mood wasn't different with me. I was with Baba, so and even though Baba was gone, Baba was being represented by All Japan, so that's why I stayed, because my relationship was with Baba.
How serious was the competition there between Baba and Inoki? If you wanted to go to the other company, I mean, how hard would it have been for you to walk away? I mean, they were bitter rivals, correct?
Yeah, they were.
In terms of business.
Yeah, and as far as I know, they probably didn't get along well, but that's just my opinion. I'm not privy to any of that information, and so.
Okay.
But,
Another question. Mr. Dillon. Yes, will you stand up, please? No, Matthew.
I've often said nothing is original, and wrestling, I know with WrestleMania, they built up the whole idea with Hogan and Andre, and could he lift Andre, and that was a big deal. I remember very young when I was watching wrestling, and Bruno was in New York. There was a match with Bruno and Haystacks Calhoun that had tremendous interest because Calhoun was 400 or 500 pounds, and
601.
Well, he was advertised 601, maybe he was, I don't know. But that was the big thing again, and this is now going back way before, Hulk Andre. And I mean, I went to the Garden because everybody wanted to know, could Bruno Sammartino pick up Haystacks Calhoun?
Yeah. And he did it. Tell us about that night, Bruno.
Not only that, Jay, but let me tell you, if you obviously didn't know, the media didn't believe that Calhoun was 601 pounds. So they got one of those meat mark things to weigh, and he was 624 pounds. Now what happened later, poor Calhoun came down with diabetes, and his weight did drop. It came down to around 400 pounds, and they still announced him as 601. But in his height, when he was really, really heavy, he actually was well over 600 pounds. And I'll tell you that, in all honesty, when I picked him up in the Garden, I never forgot that because I thought the roof in the Garden was going to pop out. And people went absolutely out of their minds.
Okay, next question. Yes, right up front here. And your name and your question?
Jay, who would you say was the biggest real-life crazy person you knew back then?
Real-life crazy person. You got to give that to Stan Hansen first. I want to hear this one.
I think Bruno would probably know somebody that I'd always heard was really crazy, and that was Dr. Jerry Graham. I never met him. I heard a lot of stories about him. To me, I guess that's the guy that comes to my mind. Bruno probably knows.
How crazy was Dr. Jerry Graham?
Well, gosh, where do you start? Look, I hate to talk about somebody, they're not here to defend themselves, but what made it difficult, why I didn't get along at all with Dr. Graham, was that he had, we all have, I guess, to a degree, something bad habits, but his bad habit was alcohol. And there's one thing I absolutely did not like, that would not put up with, to have an opponent that was going to be half-looped. And with Jerry, that was commonplace. And so for that, we weren't very friendly. I didn't like it, okay? And we got into a few pretty bad situations. We feel bad about it afterwards. But I had no respect for anybody who came in the ring in conditions like that. I always believed people went out of their way driving to the arena. They had to pay for the tickets, and they deserved the best. Right. And when somebody didn't take that in consideration by not being able to be the best because of habits or what have you, to me that was unforgivable. And so for that, I wasn't crazy about Jerry.
Okay. Do you know, by the way, that he was Vince McMahon Jr.'s hero? Vince McMahon, he even developed that, that walk.
He told me that to my face, and
Yeah.
I said, this is when we and I used to be commentating, and I said, figures.
Larry Zbyszko, same question.
Who's the craziest?
Yeah, the most twisted person you've been. Good question.
I don't know if you can say which ones or one kind of shoe kind of fits all in that, but there was a group of guys that were fun guys, and there was a group of guys that were fun to the point of almost self-destruction. And the guys that self-destructed were the crazy ones to me. Guys like Buzz Sawyer and
first name on the list.
Some guys like that who weren't bad guys, but they were just self-destructive and crazy to the point where they didn't care.
You wouldn't go on a road trip.
Oh, no. Those are the guys that you stayed away from because you could see it coming. You weren't surprised when they destructed, and it's too bad. And myself like Bruno too, and just most of these guys kept it to after the show. because there was no responsibility for the safety of your opponent and the responsibility of business and all that. But there was some crazy guys in this business that could exist in it, make money at it, that in the real world would have wound up in a straitjacket, or a funny farm somewhere. And it was amazing, but there was a lot of them, and thank God I wasn't one of them, I guess.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions.
Behind you, Bill.
Oh, there you go. I had to turn around 360 to see that. Your name?
Oh, Blake.
And your question.
It's not so much a question as it is for Mr. Hansen as a hasty apology. I'm sorry I didn't say good morning to you this morning in the lobby.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Did anyone else not say good morning? Let's all do it now. Good morning, Mr. Hansen. Next question. Next question.
Well, I've got a comment for you. And, I don't understand. Why didn't you?
And if you're not down with that, never mind. Yes.
My name's Luke. My question is probably more for Larry and Stan. Did you guys prefer to work as a hero or a villain, both in the ring and on promos?
I tried to work as Stan Hansen. Some people like me, some people didn't. It depends who. A lot of times I was booked against. So if I was booked against Bruno, obviously, people didn't like me. But if I was booked against Larry, I might be liked.
So no preference. Okay.
Yeah, no preference.
What about you, Larry?
You know what? Bad guys make the world go round. And
that's your next book. That's the title of the next book.
Bad guys do 2 things. It makes the world go around, and it makes a hero. And one thing the business doesn't have right now is the giant hero. And because they don't have the giant bad guy. And, being the giant bad guy, and making the people hate you, it was an art. And it was the control. The heel had the control in the ring and on the stick. And really the heel basically had to be a pretty sharp guy, to really get the most reaction they could. It was an important part. The good guy could just stand there and look good, but the heels make the world go round. So.
Yeah, but also in what I did, I found that the heels, other than the exception of Bruno, really, were much more forthcoming with wanting to have pictures taken and do it. They were just easier to work with than most of the good guys.
The heels are the real good guys, and most of the good guys are really the bad guys.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you, Sam. Next question. We have time for one more question.
I think we're pretty much...
we have time for one more question. Sir, was your hand up there? Did you have a question out there? Okay. This is the final question. And your name?
Mike. Okay, Mike. Your question?
I have a question for all you three. Was there a certain area or territory that you enjoyed working for more than others?
Your favorite territory?
Oh, God. I enjoyed them all. I mean, I enjoyed all of them. Because it was all basically the same thing. No matter what territory you were in the car, you lived in the car basically, and you were with a different crew of guys, but most of the guys were basically the same. So, whether you were driving up and down from Boston to Philadelphia was the same as driving from Atlanta to Macon. So it was basically all the same stuff, just a different weather pattern.
In the States, you're in and out of different territories, but I guess to me, obviously, I think Japan was the favorite place for me.
Okay. Bruno?
Well, same with me. I would have to say New York, because New York was a big territory, and it had more big arenas, I believe, it's fair to say, than any other territory. So that made it for me, more challenging, more exciting, because when you have arenas that hold 22, 23,000 people, 24 like the Meadowland and the Capitol Arena in Washington, and of course the Garden, made it challenging and very rewarding when you got to wrestle these big arenas, and especially if they were sold out or close to it. So it was challenging as the headliner, and it was fun at the same time, and it was more rewarding too, because the bigger the arena, the better the pay.
Thank you, Bruno. Ladies and gentlemen, right now I want to turn the microphone over to my pal Sal, the founder of Wrestle Reunion, Mr. Sal Corrente.
We're done.